Deku is super intelligent, a strategist, and a hard worker, but the canon version of him slowly becomes more like his idol All Might, not using that strategist and intelligent brain of his. So I always wondered, what would happen if Deku decided to use his intelligence and strategist mind as a support hero, but on top of this, he is born with a quirk to complement him becoming a support hero. And this is what if Deku had an item enhancement quirk. Izuku Midoriya is born a normal kid. Normal as being born into a society full of superhuman-like people could be. Superheroes, or more or less superpowers, other known as quirks in this society, are extremely prevalent. Those who are of super-powered, super strength, super speed, stuff like that, would raise up above most people to become proper heroes. Some who are born with insane intellect or the capabilities of making amazing items are more down the line of support heroes. On top of that, let's not forget, there are many that build this society, the businesses, the people that pay the money to these heroes so that they can do this as a job and they can do this for forever, as long as their legs will take them. Now, Izuku Midoriya was born wanting to be a hero. His mother may have had a weak quirk and his father may have been absent, but he's heard stories. He's heard many things, and on top of that, at the age of 3 and 4, he was watching All Might on the screen. He was watching the #1 hero destroy, conquer, defeat every villain that laid in front of him. The symbol of peace was an understatement. He wasn't just a symbol of peace. He was a symbol for everybody. A symbol of prosperity. A symbol of a hero. A true hero. Many would be jealous of All Might, trying to scratch and claw their way up, trying to get to All Might's throne, but All Might would never think of it as a throne, and that's what would make him so great. That's what would make All Might the best. Still, Izuku, young kids like Izuku would watch everything that happens, would watch All Might himself, and, well, they would be excited. They would want to be like him, Izuku included. But at the age of 4, it would be very apparent that Izuku wouldn't be able to be like All Might. But his expectations were not any lower. He would arrive at the doctor's with his mother, and they would listen to the doctor explain exactly what his quirk is. It seems that he has some sort of magical touch in a way. You could call it in layman's terms. He explains and continues to explain that his quirk has something to do with the things around him. Enhancement of some sorts. He can enhance items or enhance objects. Clothing, sweaters, swords, armor, anything you can really think of, he can enhance. Now, this would be perfect for a support hero. Izuku, hearing this initially, didn't really like this idea. He doesn't want to be a support hero. He wants to be like All Might. He wants to be amazing. He wants to be super powered. He wants to be super strong, protect everybody. But the doctor says that being a support hero is just as good. He can truly help others, truly help everyone around him if he properly uses his quirk. His quirk right now seems to be relatively limited, at least in terms of the ideas he can do, but in the future, he could be extremely powerful, extremely strong. Maybe it's not him necessarily that is the strong person, and it might be making others more powerful, but think about it. Think about what you could help All Might with. Imagine making All Might something that would make him even stronger. This is something that Izuku hasn't even thought about himself. I mean, obviously not. I mean, he's just a little kid learning about his new quirk, but he's happy to hear that he has such a special quirk. And after that was said, he would then be led away with the Inko, and also the doctor would tell him good luck. Frankly, everyone needs some luck to be a hero, so he wishes him the best and hopes that he can become one in his future. Izuku's happy, and they head home. And frankly, all Izuku can think about is how he can make everything around him better, stronger, faster, anything. So he begins to just think about other ways of how he can use his item enhancements. He begins to think, how could he help his mother with it? So that's exactly what he thinks about as well. He finds his mother's favorite clothing, and he actually begins to enhance her clothing, which is kind of interesting. So he begins to enhance her clothing, and it actually gives her a small boost in speed, stamina, and everything else. She's actually surprised. This does make Izuku a little bit tired. I mean, he's kind of like just needs a bit of a rest, but still, it was pretty insane. Inko even finds it to be insane as well, thinks it's amazing. And over the next couple of years, Izuku would be kind of treated in his school as an anomaly. Frankly, some kids would believe that he has some special quirk like item enhancement. Some would believe he's kind of just touching an item and not really doing anything, and they refuse to admit that it's anything different. But that happens. Frankly, kids are a bit cruel nowadays, so they're not going to believe everything Izuku has to say, even if it is the truth. But as Izuku gets older, he continues to bug his mom about helping other agencies, helping other heroes. That's kind of what Izuku wants to do, especially off rip. That's all he wants to do. His eyes are all already set on UA, but he wants to be the best support hero he possibly can be, and he can even get a jump start right now. Frankly, many support heroes, when they're young, especially if they're talented, they get a bit of a jump start. They are able to help other agencies pretty early on, and on top of that, make some money. So around the age of about 12 or 10 to 12 years old, he would be doing just that. We're talking about technology that would be enhanced by Izuku, that would allow people to either it be lighter for them or allow them to be quicker, faster, more stamina, anything you could really think of. It actually benefits him. And of course, this does drain Izuku. I mean, he can't just infinitely do this all the time and be like, oh yeah, I'm fine, I could do this all day long. No, of course not. He has to really limit himself, you could say. Let's say if an agency reaches out to him and says that they want 100 different items enhanced, this could take days, really, maybe even a week. He can't do like 100 items in a day. It would drain him so bad that he would probably pass out for days. So he has to spread it out a certain distance. But with all that said, that's some money he would definitely be putting in his pocket and his family's pocket because of it. So he'd be making money off of the agencies for products that are already theirs. So this would be amazing for Izuku. He puts his mother in a brand new home, and let's be honest, his mother's not going to have to work anymore, not at all, because they're going to be able to save and rack up enough money throughout this time that it's completely fine. On top of that, Japan would be giving him grants and so on and so forth for all of the amazing work he's been doing. I mean, he's still a student after all. So at the age of about 13 to 14, he's already had substantial work progress with many agencies. Agencies that are like, well, endeavors. Think about Nighteyes. And then obviously some of the smaller ones, even small dojos like Gunhead and stuff like that. He would assist all of them. It just all depends on a couple things. Izuku would be happy to gain as much progress as possible in terms of making money and building relationships with these people. On top of that, it would lead to him having a bit of a friendship with someone he eventually meets at a pretty young age. At about 13-14 years old, he would meet someone by the name of Mei Hatsume, a brilliant future support hero, and she might be a little bit insane. I mean, that's just something that Izuku has noticed, but he has met her and she's made some amazing support items and some amazing things, and she's actually worked with some people as well. But frankly, it's kind of insane to think about. Izuku, obviously, would want to work with her because he can just make her stuff better. But they do get in touch a little bit, talk about some things, but Ultimately, they decide to really collab more once they both go to UA, at least that's the plan. Izuku has a free ticket into UA. UA, Shiketsu High, every high school you can think of in Japan is calling his number because they know that if they get him in to a school, they're basically getting a free support hero that would upgrade and more or less gross a ton of, well, items, projects, anything you can think of, and it would be perfect to have Izuku Midoriya coming out of UA or coming out of a different high school. They know the popularity that would come for, and they know how much agencies would work with them because of it. So this is definitely, in a way, a product placement for Izuku, but it might sound crazy, but Izuku would definitely have a good bit of advantage in terms of money he'll make off of it. I mean, of course, if he goes to UA, UA's not going to be the only one making profit off of him. He has to make profit off of his own likeness and also how good he can do certain things in terms of his quirk, of course. But UA would also be able to broaden his horizons even more than what he already has. Yes, he's worked with top heroes, but there is heroes all around that still haven't worked with him, are still skeptical because, well, he's just a kid in his own basement. Or, well, now in his nice house. Let's be honest, Izuku is ballin' at this point. But still, Izuku's progression is noticeable in terms of his quirk usage and how he utilizes it, and also the boosts and strengths that he gives certain items. So it's definitely something beneficial for UA to have on their side. UA wants to train him, get him even stronger, make him have even better progression. So when he gets an invitation to more or less go to UA as a support hero, it doesn't surprise him. He does have to go through some testing, and of course that would be very normal, but that's what all the letter would say. Testing and certain things like that, and just a bit of an interview. And that's really it, and he should be home free into UA. He's happy to hear this, but he still needs to basically go through the rest of his middle school days before he gets to that, in which would be pretty easy. He aces all his tests and stuff and so on and so forth. And it might also be because of the help of his clothing, which might sound weird, but when you are someone that can boost different attributes about yourself via your clothing, who says that Izuku won't just boost his intelligence to a small margin? Don't get me wrong, he can't boost his IQ by like 30 points or anything. He can't like make himself extremely a mastermind or anything like Albert Einstein or something. But he can definitely boost his remembering, or his memory. I don't know why I said his memory, and also boost other attributes about himself. So studying, testing, super easy. Middle school would be a breeze, and at the end of middle school, everybody would be talking about if they're gonna go to a hero school and who's going to UA. In which Bakugou makes it a statement that he's going to UA and he's going to make sure he's the only one that goes. But Izuku says that he's already gotten letters from UA and that he'll be headed to UA. But of course Bakugou says that he's just some lousy support hero. But Izuku says that he's the one that's going to make him strong. So who's really lousy? And in which Bakugou gets really mad and steps up toward Izuku and is about to throw an explosion at him, but the teacher reminds Bakugou that he could put a stain on his record so bad if he does what he's about to do. And of course, Bakugou would be like, oh, well, I gotta sit down then. So he does just that. Of course, the homeroom teacher, the teacher of Izuku, Bakugou, and many others, favors Izuku a little bit more. I mean, Izuku's kind of a big deal now. And on top of that, Izuku has helped out around the classroom. He's extremely intelligent. He does all the good things in class. He aces everything. So it's kind of hard to be mad at the person that has a good attitude and aces everything compared to the person that has this horrible attitude and aces most, if not everything. With that said though, Izuku is ready to just get out of there, finish off this day and head home, in which after the day is over, he does just that. He begins heading home and he heads under this so-called bridge, going the long way home, writing down as much things as possible, thinking about different ways to upgrade and enhance other people, heroes alike, from All Might to Endeavor to Hawks to Mirako to Nighteye to anybody you could think about, he's been writing about. he's been trying to think about different ways to enhance these top tier heroes, maybe give Endeavor a more resistant type of enhancement. But how would he even do that with the suit that he has? It's very weird. But he hasn't worked with Endeavor personally. Let's be honest, he hasn't worked with any of these top heroes personally. I mean, most of them, they want his assistance, but more or less want the assistance for their cronies, more or less their lower tier people, sidekicks, and so on. So he hasn't worked with them up ahead, but he will work with them eventually once he goes to UA. After he crosses through the bridge, though, he hears something behind him, the sludge villain. Breaking free out of the sewers, he begins to scream toward Izuku, saying that he needs his body, which is extremely creepy. Izuku backs up and immediately would run away, in which the sludge villain would be shocked. How the hell is this kid so fast? How is he not, slowing down? How am I not able to keep up? Which definitely shocks the sludge villain. But just as the sludge villain is seemingly sort of catching up to Izuku, a loud "I am here" comes from behind him, and a gust of wind would go flying through, smashing the sludge villain into a wall as Izuku dodges to the side. He looks up to see the sludge villain splattered everywhere, and as he looks toward the tunnel, a giant man would slowly walk out. It's All Might. It's All Might. Izuku would run over and say how much of a fan he is, and so on and so forth, and that he's super excited, and he's heard rumors that he's actually going to be at UA, in which All Might asks how he even figured that out, because they only told one person about that, or at least have hinted at it to one person to get him to go, and that's, oh wait, it's you. All Might says that he knows exactly who Izuku is. He's heard about him. He's heard about his work with support items and so on. And he was the only person that they told about All Might going to UA. Yes, in that letter, they used that as a way to sway Izuku to go to UA. That's how big of a commodity Izuku is at this moment. All Might says that it's a pleasure, but Izuku says no, it's a pleasure to meet him, and he says that he hopes to work with All Might very soon. He would love to work on some support items for him, maybe to make him even stronger. Izuku, or All Might, would smile and says that would be great, because there are a lot of things he needs to speak with Izuku about, a lot of things. In which Izuku says that anytime, anywhere, he'll be there to help out All Might and help out everyone else as much as possible. All Might thanks him for his hospitality and asks him to basically help clean up the sludge villain. They do just that, and All Might exchanges numbers with Izuku, saying that if he ever wants some training in, he can definitely get it. He knows that he's a support hero, but maybe one of these days he'll be on the front lines and will want to fight with his teammates and his classmates, so training won't ever hurt him. In which he thinks this is a great idea. Maybe this will help with the stamina issue with his quirk, and maybe it will even help further on, because he's kind of been just relying on him getting older for his quirk to get more stamina. But what if he just starts working out, getting swole, you know what I'm saying? But what if he just starts working out? Frankly, it would probably benefit him tenfold. In which All Might loves the idea of this and gives Izuku a thumbs up as he jumps off with the sludge villain. Izuku would be happy. This is the best day of his life. Nothing could make this even better. This is amazing. He heads home and he talks to his mother about exactly what happened, but of course she's concerned about the fact that he got attacked by a villain, in which it was actually just coincidence. To be fair, it wasn't because of who he is or what he can do and stuff like that. It was literally just coincidence, but still, she doesn't like the idea that he got attacked by a villain. Still though, his mother is happy that her son got the interaction with All Might and so on and so forth. And also happy and proud of him. I mean, how would she not be? He's basically a grown man now. He's done so much on his own and done so much to help Hero Society already. So it's just a fantastic, fantastic thing. Izuku would continue just working and trying to grow as a quote-unquote hero, or at least a future hero. And eventually he would call All Might and ask him for some specialized training. All Might says that is completely fine as long as he's okay with training with someone else, in which he says that's completely fine as well. He thinks that's a great idea. Maybe it would be definitely beneficial. in which when he arrives, he would begin training with a girl actually somewhat near his age. He introduces himself, and she does as well, and it's actually Melissa Shields. Melissa Shields is someone that Izuku knows of, but doesn't know that much of. Knows her father, but that's about it. Izuku introduces himself as basically a support or a future support hero trying to get to that pursuit, in which Melissa says that she's worked on support items all her life practically, and maybe they should collab in that regard very, very soon. And she then asks him why he wouldn't want to be, well, a brute force type of hero, maybe a hero that would fight alongside the other heroes. And Izuku says that he definitely will get to that point. He promises that he wants to maybe eventually in the future make himself his own suit of armor, maybe something that could stand head to head with other heroes. But he does realize that if he's able to help others and help other heroes, it's as if he is on those front lines as well, in which All Might loves to hear that. He loves to hear the idea that someone's that passionate about helping other heroes succeed, not only just succeed in himself. He then explains to Izuku what the training will be and what they will do, in which will kind of consider a lot of different things, including sparring and stuff like that. But Izuku would be a little bit behind in terms of that, especially because Melissa is, well, the next user of One For All, in which this should be no surprise, especially when adding her into this story, and it kind of fits perfectly with Izuku himself. Izuku doesn't know of One For All, of course. He doesn't know anything about it. He just knows that she's being trained, and so on and so forth. All Might continues their training over this course of time, but Izuku would have to cut it kind of short. He tells Melissa that if she ever wants help on some support items, and if she does that in her off time, to let him know that he'd love to basically enhance them however she needs and sees fit, and so on and so forth. Melissa thinks that this is a great thing, a fantastic idea for them to work together, giving her number to Izuku, saying that they'll definitely talk very soon. Izuku waves and smiles as he says his goodbyes, and he begins to more or less work on himself, work on enhancing other things, and continue this development that he knows he can have. The working out and the training definitely affected his quirk. I mean, his stamina is way higher now, and so on. But on top of that, he does need time to hone his skills. How does he want to enhance this item? How does he want to enhance this item? How does he properly add certain effects? Because he knows that he can enhance speed, strength, stamina, and stuff like that. But can he enhance it in a different way? Maybe giving certain weapons different effects. Maybe making explosions bigger. Maybe making gauntlets shoot slows on top of an explosion. Maybe this or that. That's the things that Izuku has thought about. These are the things that Izuku needs to keep in mind. So he does just that. He begins to work. The next 2 months or so, he begins to work with gloves, gauntlets, and stuff like that, and he begins to use everything around him. He would go to a freezer somewhere very cold in a nearby supermarket, and he would begin to channel his enhancements on these gloves, and eventually would giving the gloves this chilling effect. If you land a punch on somebody, it slows them greatly, and Izuku realizes that this is amazing. This is even more he needs to learn. But as he makes this chilling effect, he kind of drops to one knee. He hasn't ever done this, so he's extremely tired already. He's kind of frustrated by it, but he knows that if he starts developing more and more stuff like this, it could be amazing. It could be like those video games. It just clicks in his head. He's like a video game character in a way. He runs back home and he talks to his mother about it, asking about certain video games. And of course, she doesn't know much about them, but gives him the go-ahead to basically buy as many video games as he needs. And he begins to look into these video games, learn about them via the internet, whatever you can think about. He begins to learn about these video games. What kind of enhancement do these video games have? Magic resistance, strength resistance, combat resistance, blade resistance, anything. He can add armor resistance to certain things, adding it so that maybe explosions don't do as much damage, magic doesn't do as much damage, punches don't do as much damage. He can add regenerative factors to certain clothing. How does he do that? He has no freaking clue at all. It must have some sort of different effect, just like the chilling. He had to be in an icy or a very cold state to more or less do that. How would he do a regenerative factor? Would he have to be in a hospital? Would he have to be around someone that has a regen-like quirk? He doesn't really know. But to be fair, that's why there are hero high schools. Hero high schools are made to help him learn and figure out anything he needs to figure out. Maybe it will take them a long time to figure it out as well, at least how exactly Izuku's quirk works. But still, they're here for it, or he's here for it as well. He's excited to get into UA, and he's very excited to do a bit of his testing and interview. After some time would pass, it'd be finally time for him to convene at UA. When he would arrive, he'd be greeted by many people, and a lot of them would actually be excited to see him, including some of the future students that are there for the hero exams. Izuku, on the other hand, would begin speaking with whoever he needs to speak with, and actually speaks with some other teachers that are currently at UA. Eventually, he does speak with the main support teacher by the name of Power Loader. He tells him that he has a test to take, and then right after he'll speak with him on a bit of an interview, but he knows he'll pass all of this with flying colors. Izuku nods as he begins to work on a test, and the test involves a lot of different things in terms of just morality stuff, and also what he would do in certain situations, and on top of that, different support items that he could make for certain situations as well. Izuku would pass this with flying colors. I mean, he had his quirk alone, and the amount of experience he has would be very easy to figure stuff like this out. And on top of that, after finishing that test, the interview would go extremely well as well. He's talked to Power Loader a long time ago, not exactly recently, but he speaks with him about what he wants to do, what he strives for, what he wants to do for heroes, how he wants to help as much as possible, as if he's putting a piece of himself on the front lines. He might not personally at this moment be able to fight on the front lines with some of the top heroes and some of the most powerful heroes, but he wants to use his own technology, his own enhancements, all of that to show that even though he's not at the front lines, he's still affecting the people on the front lines. In which Power Loader is extremely happy to hear this. Izuku sounds like a born leader, even though he's not technically someone that would lead on the front lines against everybody else. He's still a leader from the shadows, and that could definitely be a beneficial thing for him to hold on to. He is a quote-unquote leader. He is someone that wants to help and preach and hope and give hope and inspire hope to everybody around him. So it's definitely something that is amazing about Izuku. He would pass that interview very easily. A Power Loader would think that he's an amazing student, or amazing future student as well, and Power Loader would tell him that he's going to be working with various other support heroes and various other people alike. He'll actually be working on some of the technology for Class 1A and Class 1B, but more Class 1A because of his advancement already further. And they're going to be kind of sectioned off into who's going to be working on what. In terms of Class 1A, some of the support heroes will be designated for that, depending on the difficulty of the enhancement. But at the end of the day, UA is happy, extremely excited that Izuku decided to come here. I mean, they didn't want him anywhere else. Frankly, having Izuku here will be so beneficial. Having him, his technology, having his mind, having his quirk, all of it. His item enhancement quirk is levels beyond most support heroes, even right now. So the fact that he's going to be able to help all of them progress for their students and even accelerate the process of many heroes in Class 1A and Class 1B, and even 2A, 2B, and 3A, and people further down the line, definitely going to benefit 100%. So they're excited to have Izuku on board and excited to see what he can truly do. In which you'll be able to see very soon what he's able to do, because the first day of UA is coming up very quickly. Izuku would head back home, talk to his mother, and soon a letter would come in the mail saying that he got into UA and they're excited to be working with him. Welcome to the support course, or first year support course, and he'll be working alongside a multitude of support heroes. Some better than others, but some that may be as influential as Izuku in the near future. He can't wait, and he even hears that Mei Hatsume, someone he's spoken to briefly and worked with a little bit, is going to be at UA as well. Mei Hatsume, and also even Melissa, someone that's more or less leaning more into the hero role of things, is going to help him a ton. Because Mei, being a absolute maniac in terms of her equipment and items, and on top of that, Melissa being the highly intellectual person she is, you're going to see a lot of amazing things come out of Izuku and amazing items being enhanced. How much more power can Izuku put into his items? How much more enhancement can he put into the items to help heroes in the future? You're going to have to find out in the next parts of What If Deku had an item enhancement quirk. Finally, it's UA time. Izuku Midoriya has finally made his way to the support course room, and he's excited. He is absolutely thrilled. After basically passing everything with flying colors, Power Loader can see some massive potential in Izuku, and frankly, the entire Hero Society can see the massive potential in Izuku. He's been doing things for a long time, at least helping out other agencies, so it's not too hard to see that. The only issue is that villains will also see that. If that comes into play far later, then we'll have to find out. But everybody knows, or at least most people know of Izuku, and he's kind of this phenomenon. This person that has done so much even without being in a hero school, but now he has the funding and the ability to truly do so much more. Izuku would immediately dive into class, beginning to speak with everybody there, talking about different items that they're going to be creating, and that's exactly what they're going to be doing. Izuku is going to be in works with many different items, many different, suits and hero suits and so on, and he learns about others' quirks. He is actually assigned class 1A, since he's one of the top students, at least in this support course, and he's assigned it with Mei Hatsume and some other people as well. Him and Mei Hatsume begin to work with some of these items. We're talking about the grenade bracers that Bakugou has, and so on and so forth. Everything you can possibly think of. Izuku would also come across this weird looking suit, which was for Todoroki, which he didn't really understand it. He didn't understand the benefits of it and so on, and Mei would say that there really isn't that many benefits of it. There's some heating in it so that he can actually cool, or he can actually heat up after he uses his ice, but other than that, he is really nothing else within that suit. He asks about the quirk name though. It says that it's half and half. Doesn't that mean half ice, half fire? Mei shrugs her shoulders, saying that she doesn't really question it. She's just given the directions. But she does think about a little bit that it doesn't really make sense. But still, these are her babies, and she wants to create as much as possible, at least in terms of helping out with support items. Izuku would begin working on Bakugou's bracers, and thinking about all the times that him and Bakugou has come to words, that it all led to this, that eventually he would be the support hero helping Bakugou. He knew Bakugou was talented, and he knew that this would eventually come to fray. But that's fine, he doesn't really mind. He begins to adjust the bracers, giving the bracers a more light feel, as if it feels as if nothing is on it. And on top of that, he continues to tweak them and actually give additional effects. He wants to give a nice slow effect, which he does by basically talking to Power Loader about different areas that he can more or less go into in UA. Giving this slow effect to Bakugou's bracers will definitely help him tremendously. Bakugou wants to be close, wants to brawl, so if he can slow down or basically get people to stand still, then it will definitely benefit him in the overall grand scheme of things. In terms of Todoroki's, Izuku tries to adjust some things and add some additional stamina and different speed enhancements, but other than that, he can't really do much. He wasn't given much information, and he doesn't want to somehow hurt Todoroki in the long run. He begins to work with more and more outfits, people like Hagakure, which He can't add that much in the allotted time, and with the limited information he has, he can't really do that much overall for everybody. We're talking about extremely complex quirks that he doesn't even understand. So he'll need to definitely watch for exactly what they do, how do they utilize them, so he can get a better grasp on this in the future. But he does help everyone to the best of his own knowledge. Hagakure basically giving her more of a stealthy type of walk, making it so that her clothing could then blend in with her own invisibility, which is pretty easy for him, to be fair, because it's kind of just matching some certain quirks that he already has utilized, ideally around the idea of stealth. So since she's already invisible entirely, the whole stealth added to her clothing is a very basic idea. With that said though, he helps as many support items as he can, giving them basic boosts and so on, kind of putting everybody on a relatively similar playing field, but not being able to actually adjust everybody else's to actually their massive strengths, which is kind of sucky because he can't really get around to doing all that. And people like Kirishima and Kaminari could definitely benefit from it more than you could possibly imagine. On top of that, he has worked with Melissa Shields' items, which is kind of just allowing her to utilize her own quirk a lot better, being a lot more durable and so on. Same thing with Izuku. Izuku actually doesn't know that much about her quirk, just knowing that it's some sort of strength enhancement or some sort of acceleration of strength enhancement, but other than that, he doesn't know much more. With all that said and done though, the day for the support heroes and as much work as they possibly could do is done. And the next day, Izuku would want to at least watch in on the heroes versus villains bit of training session, in which he does get the clear and the go-ahead from Power Loader to do so. He tells Power Loader that this would be beneficial for all of them, because if they understand how everybody uses their quirks and how they're going to utilize them in the future, they could definitely make things even stronger, in which this is a good mindset for Izuku overall, because frankly, this is all he wants to do at this moment. There has been some talks about getting Izuku in kind of that hero course role as well, but Izuku himself has said that he doesn't have the breaking of limitations that everyone else has. He hasn't been able to make some suit of armor to make him even stronger. But it's funny because Meihatsume has been working on something kind of similar in a way, something that would allow Izuku to do so, but Izuku says that since it is kind of a prototype at this moment, that he doesn't really feel comfortable using it. But he does talk to Mei about being basically a walking billboard as when the UA Sports Festival comes around, telling her that he doesn't really mind overall and he'll show off whatever he can. And they can even kind of do a bit of a collab on it, knowing that Mei has some really, really good items. Hatsume is obviously happy about this and happy to hear this because, I mean, Izuku can really benefit anybody that he helps. But overall, she knows that the publicity of Izuku using and utilizing her items will definitely help when selling them and helping other agencies. After this is kind of, talked about and stuff, he then heads over with Mei and a couple others to check out the Heroes versus Villains training. They see as All Might begins to speak with everybody, talking about what's going to happen, how the heroes will invade and try to touch the bomb, and how the villains will try to protect it and try to defeat the villains or stall for time within 5 minutes. Izuku just watches as Bakugou absolutely dominates his turn, and as many others benefit from their support items. Bakugou would slightly walk over to Izuku and Mei Hatsume and ask them about what they did with his gauntlets. Izuku explains shortly what he did and says that it's really no problem, there's no reason to thank him, as he smiles and laughs. And Bakugou says that he wouldn't have thanked him anyways, and don't get over his head. Other than Bakugou though, Most of the other people were pretty grateful in terms of the utilization of their clothing as a way of boosting their power. Even All Might can see that the quirk limitations, or at least to a certain extent, their quirk limitations were affected by how much Izuku actually implemented into their clothing and implemented into their gear, which is something that is massively beneficial for heroes not only their age, but also heroes in general. All Might would speak with Izuku and Mei Hatsume about making some support items for particular people, and of course that would go on eventually, but Izuku would want to work on some things with All Might, aka wants to make some sort of equipment for All Might, because he knows there's some limitations that All Might must have, especially after working for this long as a hero. He's not invincible, nobody is. But after watching everyone go through, they were able to see Kirishima, they were able to see Momoya Yorozu, they were able to see Tenya Ida, and many, many more people like Ochaku Uraka. Their utilization of a quirk, they're able to understand more and more, in which Mei wouldn't even think about elaborating on some of these support items that they already have if it wasn't for Izuku. Mei has been basically solely working on her own support items to basically sell off to other people, but since Izuku is there, Izuku's mind for this kind of blends with Mei's, so it's extremely beneficial overall for both of them. They would both continue their tweaks because, of course, the Class 1A heroes will be heading off to the USJ very soon, so Izuku continues to tweak more and more and more, putting in kind of a vital enhancement where you can kind of hear and see what's going on based on the equipment that they're wearing, and having straight up just enhanced communication systems that he can basically enhance himself. And on top of that, he can literally just straight up enhance any communication system, very similar to what Kaminari has and so on and so forth, and have a lot of alerts and alarms and so on that he's able to put in himself through either just other technology or enhancement. So Izuku continues to do this, feeling that hero work is definitely going to be definitely be a crucial part of helping hero work, knowing how people are doing, regulating what's going on, and that's another level for support heroes. He feels that this is definitely something that will be beneficial for all of them, just to make sure that everyone is a-okay at all times. And this would actually fall into place perfectly for what's going to happen, because, well, the USJ will be under siege. A siege that Izuku may not be there for himself, but when alarms begin to go off on his computer, he's concerned about what's happening, sending messages over to the main office as quick as possible, and they initially think that it's nothing, but this is something. More people are there than expected, and it seems like the radars and communication systems seem to be turning off and on over and over again. So this is definitely something they want to check on, sending a multitude of heroes toward the USJ. As those heroes head off, Mei and Izuku continue to monitor the situation as the vitals of many of the people that they know begin to fluctuate. They're not sure if they're going in and out of consciousness or combat, but at the end of the day, hopefully they're at least okay to a certain extent. Everything would kind of go radio silent for a little bit, and Izuku and Mei Hatsume wouldn't get much information, but eventually they would hear about exactly what happened. They were right. Whatever was happening over there was a villain attack, and it was going on pretty crazy. So it was good that he had all those things installed and all those item enhancements implemented within their weapons and suits and stuff like that, because frankly, without that, it kinda would have been a little bit sticky in terms of just what would have happened. So they're able to get things cleaned up, but Izuku isn't given much information. I mean, why would he be? He's just a student. He's basically just told that everything turned out alright and that he had a pretty good part in that, and that he should start implementing those things into every single gadget, every single technology, and even maybe for some future agencies. Izuku agrees and thinks that's a great idea, and he'll continue to do so. But during this time, there's a bit of a limitation there, where he continues to do so, but he's also kind of prepping for the UA Sports Festival. I mean, he continues to enhance the body armor that Mei begins to make, and she continues to elaborate more and more on this suit of armor that she's kind of creating. Before, it was so basic, but now it's more and more and more. The rocket boots are far more advanced. The skeletal type of suit that she normally had that would allow people to move in different ways and so on and so forth is even more advanced as well, and they would continue to grow it. So during the UA Sports Festival, Izuku would definitely show it off, because the first UA Sports Festival for Izuku and Class 1A is about to be upon us. Izuku listens in as Bakugou basically tells everybody that he's going to dominate and beat everybody. Izuku kind of laughs this off because he's not going to necessarily try in this sports festival. He already has multiple agencies that want him to go there. But on top of that, he doesn't really need the recognition. Frankly, he just wants to show off this suit of armor, or at least this exoskeleton type of thing that Mei created with his help, of course. And as long as he can do that, there's really no worries overall in terms of what's going to happen. The first event would be announced by midnight. Midnight would tell everybody that it's going to be a bit of an obstacle course race. Izuku is excited for this because this is kind of perfect, and he looks toward Mei and gives her a thumbs up, basically telling her that everything is going to definitely be toward their favor, you could say, which is absolutely good to hear, because Mei wants to have as much progression and as much publicity as possible in terms of obviously her inventions and her babies, whatever she likes to call those. And that would be easy as cake. Izuku would blast through the competition relatively quickly using her suit of armor, kind of showing off as much as possible, just the mobility, just how in and out he can go from around the robots, over the robots, and so on, showing off the rocket boots, how long he can stay in the air, how long he can, or how fast he can go forward, backwards, and all of that. And everybody would be completely in awe. He's not actually winning, which is ironic enough. He's not actually trying to win this whole thing. He's actually just trying to more or less get publicity. That's all he really cares about. So it's actually kind of funny when everybody's watching in complete awe when Izuku's only like in 10th place and everybody else is kind of getting ignored at this moment. But still, it's a cool thing to watch and a cool thing to be in awe about. And Izuku would eventually finish the race, passing up a couple of more people, ending in about 5th or 6th. And Mei Hatsume, being that she made replicas of some of those items, was able to show off some of the lower tier versions of it, which definitely would help in the long run as well, because everybody wants some support items but don't want to pay a crazy price for them. I mean, that's obvious, right? You don't want to pay a butt ton or a boat ton of money for just every single person in your agency when some of them won't really have the benefits as others, and that's just the fact of the matter. But still, she shows off as much as possible, and Izuku would even get into the cavalry battle and be able to easily kind of sweep his way through the cavalry battle using some of the items, some of the armor, some of the enhancements, but everybody else isn't actually allowed to use them. I mean, think about it. The heroes and stuff like that aren't actually allowed, or the hero courses aren't allowed to use any of their special little items. So Izuku's benefits for them normally are actually kind of crutches now for them. The slow effect that Bakugou has on his gauntlets doesn't have them anymore. That could be something he definitely could get used to, but at the same time won't have them at this moment. Izuku, on the other hand, can have whatever the heck he wants. So the cavalry battle with him, Mei Hatsume, and Tokiyami, and Ochaku Araka, and so on, would actually be easier, far easier than you could possibly imagine, because for one, he has all the advancements he wants, and he can still enhance everybody else that is on his team. being that their clothing and so on. Yes, he can't do anything crazy because, I mean, there's restrictions, of course. There's decently large restrictions, but he can still boost them up a quite good bit. I mean, obviously enough. So he does boost their regular clothing, which would increase their stamina and stuff like that, but that's about it. But still, it would be beneficial for them, beneficial for him, and they would more or less get about second in the cavalry battle, and they would be able to squeak their way into the first place, or squeak their way into the 1 versus 1s. Other than this, Izuku has no intention of even going any further in this event. Could he? Maybe. If he utilized Mei Hatsume's invention with his collaboration of enhancement, he might actually be able to take this one home, but frankly, there's really no reason for him to. He's already shown off as much as he needs to show off, and he personally hasn't had the skill awareness with some of these inventions that he really should. So he can't really kind of take over how he wants to take over. He might end up just losing to someone like Todoroki, someone that is really, really, really powerful no matter what. So he doesn't really want to take that risk, and Mei Hatsume sees exactly what he's talking about, and they do promote their little inventions and stuff throughout the 1 versus 1s, but Izuku would end up just losing to Shinso, and kind of on purpose in a way. He does see some potential in Shinso. I mean, he didn't even know this guy existed. He's in the general studies, and he does tell him after the fight that they're going to talk very soon, that he feels that he can give Shinso something that would make him far more powerful and actually be extremely beneficial in a hero setting. Shinso, hearing this, immediately kind of thinks that Izuku didn't really try during the fight, but Izuku says that at the end of the day, he's a support hero. He doesn't really care too much about stuff like this. He's only sees the benefits in spreading his support technology, his enhancements, and same thing with his support hero friends or classmates. Shinso kind of understands what he's saying. I mean, Shinso is technically a general studies student, so he kind of gets what he's trying to get across, and he understands exactly why Izuku wouldn't try super hard in terms of a 1 versus 1. He has nothing really to gain, and might as well just give whoever else has stuff to gain a chance. On the other hand, though, Izuku does bring up the fact that he'll be working on some equipment for Shinso, maybe to give him more of a chance physically in terms of fighting, because that will definitely benefit him in the long run, but also something that would be more elaborate in terms of his quirk. Because at the end of the day, once people figure out what his quirk is, it's going to be kind of difficult to get people to actually talk to him. Maybe something that would kind of mask his voice into different voices will be something nice. Shinso hears this and kind of smiles at it, because this is something he's thought about and something he'll be getting far sooner than later, or far sooner rather than later, which would excite Shinso in extreme amounts, giving him the idea that he definitely will have a chance to try his hand in getting into the hero course at the end of the day. Izuku says that if he needs anything else enhanced or created, and he has any ideas, to come to him and Mei, that they should work on it. He's here all the time. He barely even goes home now because of how much stuff they have here. There's really no reason for him to go home when they have all of this amazing equipment here for him to utilize. He tells him that he upgraded Bakugou's bracers and Todoroki's suit, and everybody that has a quirk that is beneficial for physical combat has seen insane enhancements based on Izuku, and he tells him that he'll help him out any way he can. Shinso's grateful, of course, and Izuku would wish Shinso good luck after a little bit of time talking, telling him to give it his best because he has some crazy strong opponents that are ahead of him. And then after the UA Sports Festival, and after, frankly, Bakugou would end up winning because Todoroki would refuse to utilize his fire quirk. I mean, there is nobody that would kind of lean him into that. Izuku being a person that could, but he didn't actually survive that long. Maybe Todoroki will end up using his fire quirk for a different reason after speaking with Izuku in the long run, But at the end of the day, right now, he'll be stuck more or less just using his ice, unless he finally has his bit of a epiphany that he should utilize both. But for now, he refused to use it, and Izuku will not be the one helping him use it or utilize it in the long run, or at least not for now. Izuku, though, would see that the UA Sports Festival is finally over, and it's now time for him to truly kind of find an agency to go to. An agency that he can help out, or anything to think about in terms of all that. He's helped a lot of agencies, so let's be honest, there would be tons of agency offers no matter what. He could have not done the UA Sports Festival, and he most likely would have had a ton of agencies on his list, just from the flat out idea that they can get benefit from Izuku. And of course, he would look very closely into who he wants to go and who he wants to work with. Who would he be able to benefit the most out of everybody? Who would he be able to help out in terms of agencies? Well, that's a whole long thought process for himself. He goes through letter after letter after letter after letter, and eventually he would decide on one. He would decide on someone that he can actually benefit heavily through information that was given to him. And that's Sir Nightaye's agency. On top of that, he'll get to work with one of the big three members, someone that he's pretty fond of overall, someone that he feels that he can even benefit him as well. So that's exactly what he's going to do. But before he does it, he does get in contact with Melissa, asking her what she's going to end up doing for this, well, agency or this internship portion of their schooling. And she already has someone in line, but does ask for him to more or less enhance some equipment that she made for herself. Some arm bracers and some clothing that would look very similar, or at least reminiscent of an All Might clothing. And on top of that, she just wants more durability, you could say. Izuku is completely fine with that and says that he'll do what he can in the short period of time and while he's working at Nighteye's agency, and he'll have somebody ship it over to her. She thinks this is great as she writes down the address, and Izuku gets to work. But before he can truly finish up, he would head to Sir Nighteye's agency and exactly dive into what's going on. And what's going on has been happening for a long time. A notorious villain group, other known as the Shie Hassaikai, has been running rampant for a long time, and Izuku is there to assist in the location of where this is going on. Can Izuku find out where Overhaul and the Shie Hassaikai is? They haven't been found in a long time and haven't been found yet, so can Izuku truly make a difference in this regard? Well, you'll have to find out in the next part of What If Deku Had an Item Enhancement Quirk. Izuku Midoriya is finally ready for his internship. But yes, this internship is a lot different than many others because he is a support hero. He didn't go down the line of an actual pro hero. Yes, support heroes are heroes, but they're more of a helping type of hero, like I said before. Izuku, though, would arrive at Sir Nighteye's agency. His goal there is to stop one person, or actually find one person by the name of Overhaul, and shut down the Shie Hassaikai forever. During the next couple days, he would speak with Sir Nighteye, with Mirio, and learn as much information as possible. And he would begin to make some sort of radars to more or less try to track down where this person can be and how to even search for him in general. He would begin to try practically everything, anything he could possibly think of. He begins to regulate, enhance anything he possibly can to try and triangulate the location of the Shie Hassaikai, and through a ton of different means of GPS and location systems, he actually is able to triangulate the relative location of where the base could possibly be. And on top of that, they begin to send out some scouts and some people out there, including Izuku himself, to the field to check out where this location could possibly be. After a bit of searching, that location would kind of be narrowed down. It's a bit of a weird area, and it seems to be kind of covered up relatively well, but according to officers, there's a building that hasn't really been lived in a long time. But if you look around, there's slight maintenance here or there around the area, but at the same time, there's some places in the area around the building that look extremely old, as if no one's touched it in a long time, seemingly purposely at that. So Izuku would be very keen on where this location is, as he begins to just indicate other places as well, just in case. That's until he hears what happens with Mirio Togata. Mirio actually runs into someone kind of frightening. He runs into Overhaul himself. Now this is a situation that luckily Mirio is able to get himself out of, but there's a little girl that Mirio is keen on, and it seems as if she's in some sort of plan of all of it. It's very, very bone-chilling. Izuku would get this information, and since they know exactly where to go in terms of the base, at least to an extent, he begins working with everybody, getting gear ready for every single person he could possibly think of. He begins to work with this gear and even gets some more spy equipment to more or less look ahead in terms of this siege. He wants to make sure everybody is well equipped and well aware of what's going on next. Izuku would give gear to Mirio that would enhance his powers even more. And on top of that, actually give him some clothing that won't completely fall off, which is definitely a plus. And this clothing would even benefit him in various different ways, like durability, and even giving certain aspects of his own quirk additional strengths because of his item enhancement. On top of that, he would give Mirio some sort of ring. This ring would actually store something for him. It would be a way for him to actually utilize his quirk to switch in and out of suits, and if he decides to eventually take on a weapon, maybe a weapon that would benefit him, which Izuku doesn't really know what that would be, he would be able to switch it out using this ring as well, which is definitely beneficial in the long run. Izuku would work with Sir Nighteye to get Nighteye some more equipment as well for himself, for the sidekicks he has, and for many, many, many more people, especially in different agencies. He actually works on Melissa's stuff as well here and there, and ships off a bit of a gauntlet, or the gauntlet that she made and he more or less enhanced to basically allow her to have more durability and be able to utilize One for All, in which Izuku doesn't really know much about, but utilize One for All to a greater extent. With that said though, the problem at hand deals with Sir Nightaye's agency and dealing with Overhaul and everyone there. So they begin to kind of collide with other agencies. Nighteye's agency, Ryukyu's agency, and many others, and they begin to combine, including the people of the big three, and they all need stuff to be either enhanced or allow their plan to go relatively smoothly. They understand to a certain extent how Overhaul's quirk works, and how a lot of his gang has a lot of unique quirks as well. So needing Izuku to utilize that idea in terms of certain effects are definitely going to be beneficial. So Izuku is up for probably all night to multiple days working on this. Not able to go back to UA just quite yet, and in between his time he is working on stuff that he needs to work on for his classroom and for UA itself, but he keeps working. Eventually it's all comes together. He has a ton of equipment out for everybody, and everybody is now benefiting from his item enhancement quirk, but Izuku is completely exhausted. There was no intention for him to be on the front line. He's just hoping for the best. He made equipment for them to utilize. He even had Meihatsube make some equipment and actually allow him to utilize that equipment for free, as long as he will help her with something else later. But still, he's able to help as much as possible, and he's still able to more or less do as much as possible in the long run. So when they all go out for that final test, the fight with the Shie Hassaikai, he's waiting patiently. He's waiting and he's looking on the spy cameras he made and continues to control. He continues to watch them and waits. He's worried though, very worried. He's not sure how well they're going to do, and frankly, he doesn't know how well his equipment really is going to do in the line of work like this. But luckily and beautifully enough, it would work really well. The main reason and the big off-guard idea that would be going into this hideout invasion would be all the unknowns. But with Izuku, you can clear up so many different unknowns in a matter of minutes. His equipment alone would allow and set up for that. The spy cameras, everything that he makes and everything that Meihatsume makes and that he can make even better would set them up for an amazing outcome. We're talking about people and heroes that would struggle initially don't struggle this time around. On top of that, they don't have the League of Villains to deal with. But yes, this may be so, and yes, this may be completely and entirely true. But on the other side of things, and on the other area of Japan, at Hosu City, there's a bit of an excursion going on. An invasion of Nomus and many more. But luckily, the person that's there in Melissa is able to handle most of it, especially with her usage of One For All and also the advanced gauntlet that she has on her. She is more than prepared to handle things at Hosu City, especially in terms of the hero killer. On top of that, we have people like Todoroki and many others that would still be there and would be able to help out in the long run as well. So it's pretty apparent that these items and these support items make things that much easier and that much more fluid for the people around, and also for Izuku and the people that are surrounding him. The agencies and stuff like that will have insane benefits because of Izuku, insane benefits because of his support items, and that's just flat out the truth. Izuku, on the other hand, though, once everything is cleared up and everything is safe and sound, he would actually meet the little one that Midoriya was talking about. After actually defeating and capturing Overhaul without really much of a hitch, and with some of the more advanced capture items that Izuku has made, being that of this slow effect and also this binding effect, Izuku is able to help so many different people, or at least help with the entrapment of Overhaul. So eventually he would meet the little girl that the fuss was so far about, and that or so crazy about, and which is Eri, who has some insane quirk that was being utilized for the villain side. This does worry Izuku just a little bit. Frankly, if his equipment get off or go to some other people and some other villains, that could definitely be something that's bad. I mean, if he allows the villains to get some of his own equipment, it could backfire on the heroes. Luckily, he could just make insane equipment for the heroes to counteract it. But still, that's definitely a worry he's thought about. Can he even retract these enhancements he makes from his own equipment? He's not really 100% sure about that. He's not actually sure at all. But hopefully, it doesn't really come out to be that way. Hopefully, he doesn't have to deal with that in the near future. Still though, everything would be wrapped up. Luckily, Tenya Ida doesn't, kick the bucket in this scenario, but everything would wrap up and Izuku would head back to UA, actually a little bit earlier than usual, but still, he would head back to UA, and Nighteye would make it clear that he always has a place at Sir Nightaye's agency. His utilization of equipment, his eye for more or less seizing upon situations for their own benefit, and on top of that, seizing the counterability of certain quirks is something that Izuku, for one, has always had, but also he can utilize in his item enhancement quirk. But after some time, Izuku would head back to UA and get right back into support and making items. He begins to speak with Meihatsume about new items she's making, in which it's a more or less a suit of armor that she's been working on for a while now. She wants enhancements on it, but she wants it to be perfect before anything else can be situated. Plus, they do need someone to wear it, so it's kind of hard for him to, or for them to make these final adjustments without knowing who will wear that suit of armor. With that said though, Izuku continues to work with people like Melissa and many others. Mostly Melissa, because there is some sort of connection there that they have and that they've known each other for a little bit now, and she's always been pretty supportive of what he's doing. On top of that, she's actually got a pretty good mind for support items herself. But Izuku would continue making support items and making these support things for actually their final exam. Izuku's final exam is to make these other heroes some support items. And more specifically, he'll be deemed one group of people. And those two are Melissa and also Bakugou. And who's their opponent? The one and only All Might. Izuku has to plan, script, and figure out whatever he can do to give them an advantage against All Might himself, and he begins to build as much as possible, tampering and fixing up with Bakugou's explosive gloves and actually giving them more effects than you could possibly imagine. His goal is to slow down All Might. That is what he wants. If they can slow him down, they could beat him. Because the mindset for Izuku is not escaping, is not surviving, it's defeating. So he begins to make equipment that would allow them to slow him down slowly but surely, a lot dealing with ice cold weather. Then he sits in multiple freezers, ironically enough, making rings, making other equipments, and adjusting Bakugou's and Melissa's equipment to allow them to just chip at All Might slowly but surely. But will this work in the long run? Will All Might even be defeated against Melissa, someone who he's training at this moment, and Katsuki Bakugou, the young prodigy with an explosive quirk? Well, you'll have to find out in the next part of What If Deku Had an Item Enhancement Quirk. Izuku has worked with both Melissa and Bakugou for a good amount of time to try and figure out what they want personally for support items. On top of that, he used all of the repertoire he possibly could to enhance them to effectively neutralize one All Might. The fact is, he was told who his opponent would be, or their opponent would be, and his test is to stop that said opponent. Yes, he was given arguably the hardest, if by far the hardest, opponent out there, but still, he feels that he can get the job done. What he feels with All Might is that he is slowing down to an extent. He's seen it personally. I mean, All Might obviously isn't the same person he was a long time ago. Izuku counts that All Might used to basically be out and about patrolling or stopping villains 8 to 12 hours a day. Now, if you are lucky to see a sighting of All Might, that was very, very different in the past, which must mean he's slowing down. So what would happen if you slowed down All Might even more? That's exactly what he wants to do. He works with Melissa to more or less create these items that would more likely or not slow down All Might using some sort of slowness effect, giving that like chill factor, and when the body temperature begins to fluctuate, All Might would definitely feel its effects. Izuku would feel its effects more, or would have more effect on the battle than he would possibly really imagine. He wouldn't realize that in doing this, it would affect All Might drastically more than what he even expected. So when Melissa and Bakugou begin to shoot out and more or less fight All Might with the punches that Melissa lands, it seems that it more or less stacks this ice effect around All Might, and when an explosion lands, it does the same thing. On top of that, giving All Might this passive kind of poison, but it's more like a anesthesia or like an anesthetic, more or less forcing All Might to be a little bit more groggy. In doing all of these things, it effectively slows down All Might. Those muscle fibers that would be super quick and more or less would allow him to throw blows and punches so quickly would begin to slow down drastically, and eventually it would be shown that All Might would be on the back foot. All Might was getting beat by Melissa and Bakugou. Yes, Melissa has the power of one All Might herself, but still, the combination of the support items, the combination of some awkward teamwork from Melissa and Bakugou, being that Bakugou doesn't really like teaming up with anybody, so it kind of looks a bit awkward when they're fighting. It actually throws All Might off, leading to him actually being taped with the capture tape, and they win. Not on escaping, but on beating All Might himself. Bakugou, in a way, is still not satisfied, but that's just Bakugou doing Bakugou things. They obviously had a great plan going in, and Izuku passes his own exam with flying colors. He's happy to see that both Melissa and Bakugou did well, and Melissa would even come up to him and would more or less sing his praises, talking about how it felt like the battle was over before it even started. It seemed like Izuku analyzed everything to a T. Izuku says that he's getting better at that. He's slowly but surely gaining more and more experience, and the more experience he more or less knows, or the more experience he has, the better his items will get in terms of the skill factor of his items, in terms of the additional effects, in terms of the strength enhancement of his own items, and so on and so forth. Melissa is just flat out impressed, saying that they're going to be working together for a long time, and she just knows that for sure. He's going to have success far beyond just UA. It's going to be an outreach of so many different things. Izuku smiles and thanks her, and more or less commends her as well, that the support items are nothing without the person who's using them. He thanks her for the compliments and tells her to go celebrate with her class, as he's going to go get his grade from his teacher. He heads back, and Power Loader, of course, is extremely impressed. He says that he approached things amazing, far better than he even would have. That ironically enough, he would definitely have a job in the future if he wanted to teach support kids as well at UA. Izuku smiles and says maybe in his older years he would definitely consider that, but right now he's on to the future of more or less just supplying support items to anybody. And he continues to do this with some time and downtime off. He does spend that with, resting and hanging out with the family, hanging out with his mother and stuff like that. But he also takes his time where Class 1A is completely gone, including Class 1B is gone. He takes his time to actually just make support items for different agencies, mainly actually Sir Nighteye's agency. He continues to work with them, and he even gets in a work study earlier than you would even think, and he continues to work with them, learning more and more. And he helps with Sir Nighteye, helps with Mirio, anybody that really needed a quirk enhancement or a support enhancement. He did just that, making people like Bubble Girl and that aren't really good at hand-to-hand combat, well, pretty good at all of their weakest points. This is something amazing for every single agency. It seems that Sir Nighteye definitely made a good pick in Izuku, because all the support items they're getting is straight from him, and it's a more developed him. It's not the Izuku that was before UA, where he was giving support items, and yes, they were strong, but these are a whole nother level. You can tell that the experience and the knowledge Izuku has gained has increased the wealth of more or less the items he creates. His items are so much better than ever before. They're higher strength in terms of statistics, and they even make people stronger by multiple times over. Izuku even is able to add multiple effects: slow duration, strength enhancement, fire whittling, anything you can think of, an effect that they could put on somebody else, a villain in a fight, would be Izuku's more or less forte. He would do just that. But after a bit of working with Sir Nighteye, and after a bit of time or downtime, eventually Class 1A and Class 1B would arrive back at UA. But that's not all. A bunch of them are actually in the hospital. This would concern Izuku. He wonders what even occurred, but he learns through the grapevine that it was actually an attack from the villains, and that Katsuki Bakugou himself was captured. Now this would concern Izuku, but not for the fact that Bakugou is going to get more or less transferred over to the dark side or the villain side, but it's more concern of Bakugou's well-being. On top of that, the support items Bakugou has himself could be used for horrible things, Izuku would never want that to occur. But still, Izuku begins to think, what's the best way of going about things and how are they going to find him? Supposedly though, there's a tracker, and Izuku hears of this, and he tells them that he wants to supply all of the heroes that are going in for a fight with as many support items as they need. He'll even revamp their hero outfits to include better enhancements, more or less allowing them to be even stronger than before. Izuku wants to do this to make sure that, well, his old childhood friend is safe. I mean, yes, they've never been on amazing terms, but still, he wants to make sure he's good. He's not going to just allow Bakugou to, well, just kick the bucket. He refuses to let that happen. So he helps as much as he possibly can, creating items for people like All Might, Endeavor, Best Genius, anybody you could really think of, even Gran Torino, and he helps everybody you possibly can imagine, and they are ready for their raid on this villain base, and they immediately are able to kind of seize all the villains. And with the support items and some of the captive support items that Izuku gives them, they're actually able to send all of those villains off to prison instantaneously. A support item that Izuku's been working on for a while that would basically put all of them away within prison pretty quickly, actually limiting them entirely and not allowing them to even escape in general. So he immediately would put them all into prison, and All For One really wouldn't have anything to say about it. But the advantage still would lie with the villains. You might think that's a bit crazy to think about, but All For One is one hell of a tricky person, teleporting Bakugou away and also bringing everybody and pushing everybody away to force All Might into a bit of a 1 versus 1 scenario. But Izuku is watching this, and while he's watching this, he kind of gets this like eerie feeling. He wants to help All Might somehow, some way, but he personally can't go out and do that. That is dangerous. It could get himself killed. Yes, he's not afraid of death. He's not afraid of going out and helping somebody and dying for it, but there's a big difference to throwing your life away and then being prepared for something. He begins to think and think until he remembers. He looks at his phone, and Mei Hatsume has texted him, confirming his suspicion and his idea. Mei is the key. Not exactly her, but something they've been making. Izuku would immediately walk into the lab, and this fight between All For One and All Might is still brewing. He would tell Mei that they can help All Might now. She refuses to allow him to put on the suit and go fight All For One. That's insane. The suit may be strong, but he doesn't even really have a quirk. Yes, he has a support quirk. He's going to get himself killed. Izuku shakes his head and immediately touches the suit. As the suit is touched, it turns into this small little ring. Izuku says he's been working on this for a while, tells her not to worry, and puts the ring on himself. He immediately would run outside as he pushes the ring out, of more or less pushing the ring forward, and he goes into the suit instantaneously. He flies off, and Mei can think that he's going to get himself hurt. But Izuku's only doing this to get to the location he needs to get to faster. Izuku would arrive, and he would face somebody right face to face. He would tell him that his disputes with All Might end here. Yes, he knows they haven't been in the best of friendships recently, but they still have a history, and he knows that he wants to protect All Might. Izuku would take off the ring and put it on Sir Nighteye. He would tell Nighteye to go help his friend and to go help his former main hero. He's no longer the sidekick he once was. He's now a renowned hero. So go show everybody that he's just as strong as All Might and just as important as him too. All Might at this point is losing. Even with the enhancements of Izuku, his longevity of his quirk has faltered so much, and even more than possibly in canon. Giving up One For All to Melissa, and even earlier than before, drained him so much, putting him in a position where he's sitting there in this Small Might form. But as All For One looks to finish All Might off, a suit of armor would come spiraling out of nowhere, landing a blow to All For One so hard that it sends shockwaves around them. A kick to All For One's back sends All For One spiraling down to the ground, and All Might would look in complete shock. Who is that? The mask would come up, and it's Sir Nighteye himself. Sir Nighteye would tell All Might that it's time for them to put their differences aside, and he apologizes for their distance recently, but this is a chance for him to help his old friend and help the person that helped him get to where he was. All Might would say that he has one last attack and that's about it, and All For One would stand, putting all of his quirks in one arm, telling them that all of this ends here and now. A suit of armor right next to All Might himself. All Might would put all the power and the last embers of One For All into his right arm, as both Sir Nighteye and All Might himself would go charging forward to strike All For One down, hitting him with a combined United States of smash, and immediately All For One would be faltered on the ground, and the League of Villains would be seized. Were there challenges to be faced in the near future? Of course. There are always challenges for heroes, but with the captures of the League of Villains and All For One, Feld and Izuku continuously getting stronger and stronger in terms of making everybody around him that much stronger, there may not be anything to worry about, because the future of the pro heroes is truly in the hands of these students, and is truly in the hands of the greatest support hero to ever live, Izuku Midoriya. And that is the end of What If Deku Had an Item Enhancement Quirk. And if you enjoyed, make sure to show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, and leave a comment down below. I hope y'all enjoyed the series, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.